Hello. Today I'm going to look at LUME and a few sports watches. They're mainly dive watches, as you can see. Now, first up is the JLC Polaris Mariner date. Next to it is a green Captain Willard from Seiko. Next to the Willard is a new 41 mil Rolex Submariner with date, and next to that is an H. Moser and C Pioneer Center Seconds. And finally, we've got the Sealos Frost Swordfish in titanium. So let's have a closer look at each of them now. So here's the JLC, and you can see it's got a lovely, lovely blue dial. The Seiko is still relatively new, but I've found that strap really comfortable to wear. The Moser is fantastic. Just look at the dial. It's basically the reason I got the watch. And the sub is just a classic it's a dive watch style. It's got a slightly beefier case now, but the lugs are slightly slimmed down. And finally, the Swordfish, which is just a fantastic little watch and good value. So the next thing now is to look at the actual lume that these guys provide. Okay, so here are all the 5 watches that have been charged up. I've used an ordinary torch to do this. It's not a UV torch. And I've recorded about 15 to 20 minutes of footage. And this first minute is in real time. And then I'll have some shots of the watches in close up just to break things up a bit as we go through. But even as we're speaking, have a look at the JLC on the left-hand side. Do you notice anything that's happening there? Because that minute hand is a different color. It's meant to be orange compared to everything else. But you can see it's fading quite badly, even within the short space of time that we have here, which is probably around about a minute, as I said. So that's slightly concerning. Now, to be fair to the JLC, here is one that I did later when I tried to charge it up a little bit more. And as you can see, there's absolutely no problem here with the minute hand during the time that we're looking at the watch. So the possibility is it was just me being completely cack-handed with doing the charging in the first place. Having said that, I have seen comments on forums talking about the lume and the minute hand not being so good. So I think it is something to keep an eye on if you're interested in this watch and lume is important to you. So this next section is the rest of the lume footage sped up. And as you can see, they're all doing relatively well at the moment. Well, apart from the minute hand and the JLC, that is, of course. So the first watch up for its close-up is the Seiko. And you can see that greenish Lume Bright really is pretty distinctive and it lasts ages. And when it's fully charged, the lume can easily last right through the night. And the next watch we're going to be looking at is the Submariner up close, and apologies for the fact it's completely out of focus. The Superluminova used here, blue-green color, is pretty cool, and it lasts relatively well too, though maybe not quite as long as the Seiko. But having said that, at least generally, the bezel on a Rolex will always line up, which isn't always the case for Seikos. So next up is the Moser, and love the watch, love the dial, but the lume's a bit weird simply because it's so asymmetric. And last but not least, we have the Sealos, which is a frost variant, so it's got the fully lumed dial. So you can see that this is pretty bright. I'd go so far to say that if you were outside at night and you had this fully charged, you don't necessarily need to reach for your phone if you need a torch. Possibly use this if it's fully charged. So we're now coming towards the end of the video, and you can see that pretty much all the watches are starting to die down in terms of how much lume has been output, especially the JLC and the Moser. But the Rolex, the Sealos, and the Seiko are still fairly legible, and I think they'd remain so during most of the night as well. So if I was choosing a watch solely based on lume, I'd probably choose the Sealos or the Seiko, but you don't normally choose a watch solely on that basis, and 9 times out of 10 here, I'd probably end up going for the JLC or the Moser. What do you guys think? Thanks very much for listening.